Americans love a contest. And when it comes to political campaigns, the difference between winning and losing often comes down to the power and timing of a message. Today, we speak with a true legend in political messaging, Celinda Lake. Called the godmother of Democratic polling, Celinda has been a trailblazer for women in politics, a mentor to generations of strategists, and she's never been afraid to call it like she sees it for all to see on democracy's biggest stage. From Ballard Studios in Washington, D.C., it's 13th and Park.
The hard things that are necessary, we either do it or we'll pay the price down the road.
That often is missing in politics.
We have to solve everything.
It's a nightmare.
You and I can differ, but that doesn't mean you and I cannot be friends.
I have faith in the American people.
Those are the facts.
The Illuminati, right there. Aliens could have invaded and nothing would surprise me at this point.
We went from North Korea to M&M. That's a lot, man.
What's in this tea?
Celinda Lake, welcome to 13th and Park. I have to tell everyone in the audience that we have a lot of history, you and I, that goes way back, right?
We started in kindergarten, obviously. It's great to be with you. It is so good to be on your show.
I just remember the first time we were working, I think it was a referendum. I want to say in Arizona, but yeah, these things blur, right? And how cool it was to have an interaction as a Republican media consultant with a Democratic pollster. I mean, I don't know about you. That's where I learned a lot of stuff.
I probably learned the most I've ever learned, as well as made one of my best friendships in life with the Terrence Group Edgoas and the Battleground Survey. That was a wonderful effort because we each wrote our own analysis and didn't share it of the same data set until after it had been done. And that was so interesting.
Well, you know, you wrote this book years ago with Kellyanne Conway.
Yeah.
What Women Really Want, I think it was the title of the book.
That's right.
And that was back, I think, in 2005. Has much changed about what women and women voters really want? I'm sure it has. And what has changed?
Well, one of the things that really changed is that we lost women.
Yeah.
And so our formula for victory for progressives and Democrats is to win women by more than you lose men. And that didn't happen in 2024. It did happen in 2020. So that is a very sobering reality. And there was a temporary movement among young people toward moderate and more conservative views. Now there's a big divergence where young women are getting more liberal again and young men are staying more moderate. And there's quite a gender gap emerging among young people. So it'll be interesting to see how that happens. But a lot of the things are still the basics. And women trying to figure out, how do I get things for my family? What does it really mean to be juggling work and family and working for my family? What is fidelity and what is not in marriage? And a lot of the things, the more things change, the more they stay the same.
Were you surprised at all? Obviously, in 2024, everyone had a prediction about what seemed to be a race that was coming in for a very, very close finish between Donald Trump and Kamala Harris, and it didn't turn out that way. What were the lessons, the takeaways for you?
One thing I would say is we polled in all 9 battleground states in the last 2 weeks before the election, and we had ourselves behind in every single one.
Wow.
So that was really sobering. But we were hoping that there would be a surge in turnout that would make the difference and pull us back, although we were very, very concerned. And we were hoping that women would rally.
Right.
The hardest thing to do is to get turnout. And Trump has been very able at surging his vote. We've been uneven in getting our vote out. And in 2024, everybody knows low propensity Dems, but we had high propensity Dems, enough of them not turn out to vote, enough what we call Biden skippers that we just released a new study on with Way to Win that is just extraordinary, looking at these Biden skippers. People who voted Democratic in 2020 didn't vote Democratic in 2024. So it was a very sobering look at the data.
So let's talk about Biden skippers. What was it about 24 that just wasn't enough to compel them to do their civic duty and be a part of this election?
One of the things that I loved about this study, it was so smart, it countered every piece of conventional wisdom. So conventional wisdom was they were flirting with Trump. Not at all. They disliked Trump from the get-go. What they did think is, I'm sick of making the choice of the lesser of two evils. Now, we could say there was a big choice here, but that's what they felt. The second thing, conventional wisdom said that they were blocked from voting. And there was some of that, but they said, no, that's not what kept us. We have a lot of experience getting through to vote. We'll stand in line. We'll force. But they did feel that their vote wouldn't make a difference. And they felt that Harris was going to lose.
Wow.
And of course, that's really hard for the Democrats to hear, because now by not voting, you're ensuring that the Democrats will lose. And then the third thing is they felt nothing had been delivered for them personally at their kitchen tables. There was a lot of talk about new jobs and all this stuff, but they felt personally, for me, things are worse, not better. And nobody seems to get that. Democrats have to offer an economic alternative. They're looking for fighters and people who stand up.
There you go.
AOC and Bernie Sanders are very popular with them. And the remedy is very different from a lot of the conventional wisdom as well.
One thing that seemed obvious, at least from my perspective, is so many Americans going into that election, and actually for the last couple of years, as you know, Celinda, have been kind of down the mouth about how things are. And they were looking for something different. And my theory is if she had really brought it on that front, it could have been a whole different election.
I really agree with you. And again, I do not abide by criticism of Harris. Sure, things could have been different. But in 107 days, when you're parachuted in, it was miraculous what she did. And I really admire her. That said, probably the most damning answer, which is still a mystery to me, is I wouldn't do anything different than Biden. Well, heck, Biden would have done different things than Biden did. So that was just really an unfortunate answer and never corrected. People also think they don't vote against Democrats because we're too liberal. They vote against Democrats because we're perceived to be too weak. When we ask one-word descriptions of the Democrats, people will say things like sloth, weak, lazy, rat, snake. And it's like, okay, and we wonder why we're not getting these people's votes. Now, they say greedy and things like that when they hear Trump and for the rich, but they also hope that maybe they'll get some crumbs. One of the things that I love is the voters in the focus groups who will say constantly, well, you have to break a few eggs to make an omelet. Well, my own view of it is, he isn't just breaking eggs. He killed a chicken and burned down the kitchen, okay? There's no omelet out there. But voters think, what is the change? What is the vision for the future? And unless we offer one, they're not going to vote for us.
So you've already intoned Ocasio-Cortez and Bernie Sanders. Could there be enough of an appetite, given that obviously they're on the more progressive, more liberal end of things, even the Democratic Party?
Oh, I think there's no question about it. People want people who are authentic and honest and in touch with their lives and tell it like it is and fight for them. Voters may not agree with every policy. Heck, voters don't agree with most of the policies of Donald Trump. But we should remember that our ratings are still lower than the Republicans' ratings.
Well, that's what Bernie Sanders has been saying a lot in the last 6 months. He said, look, we kind of lost the working class, lost their confidence. We got to get that back. Isn't that kind of at the heart of what you might call the Democratic playbook?
Totally. It's what mobilizes our vote. It's what gives us a persuasion vote. The administration was saying inflation is better, inflation is better. And it's like, what planet are you on? You know, I was talking to some of the highest leaders and I said, have you bought groceries lately? And it's like, I don't mean to be nasty. In fact, it's not a good use of your time to buy groceries. I'll go get your groceries if you need them. But I'm getting 2 bags for what I used to get 3.
Yeah.
You cannot keep telling people that inflation is okay. It's not okay. And we should be talking about healthcare costs and prescription drug prices. And we should be fighting for people on the affordability agenda. And that is not a liberal or a conservative agenda. That's just real lived experience. And a lot of our candidates this year, led by Mandami, but others as well, have been on that agenda and they've been winning because they've been on it.
Do you think that New York race is maybe a harbinger of things to come?
I think it is. But what really concerns me is so many of our Democrats are spooked by what we should be energized by. I mean, people should be endorsing Mandami. And we have the easiest answer in the world. I'm for whom my people chose. The voters chose this person. I'm for whom my voters chose. And these are not radical ideas. Rent control in New York is not a radical idea. Every military base in this country has a grocery store.
True.
It's called the PX. These are not radical ideas. The former mayor started childcare, and now he's just expanding it. These are just sound new policies, and let's give him a try. And he said, you know, if the grocery store thing doesn't work, okay, we'll try something else. And voters are like, yes, let's try something.
So I was listening to an interview on Bloomberg with Cuomo the other day, and he was hitting Mamdani for being a more radical socialist, and he specifically attacked him as being kind of the candidate of TikTok. Now, I think that was the wrong way to go. Here you have Cuomo trying to show he's still modern, et cetera, attacking TikTok, which is the number one source of information for a lot of voters, with all the voting publics that you deal with all the time. There's been increasing focus on Gen Zers. What are you seeing in the data right now to answer that question about where they are now and where they might be moving?
The Gen Zs and the Gen Xers are very different. Let's talk about the Gen Zers because they're a huge bulk of the electorate. They are, first of all, very economically down. They are absolutely convinced they will not be as well off as their parents. Their parents are absolutely convinced they won't be as well off as them.
Yeah.
You know, when I started out, and I'm stunned because working with people in my office, they can't pay off their loans. I never worried I could pay off my loans. They can't get a down payment for a house. I never worried I could get a down payment for a house. I mean, I knew I'd have to work for a while to put it together.
Mm-hmm.
They are very worried about getting jobs. I never worried I could get a job. It's just an entirely different economic situation for them. And I've got 30-year-olds still in group housing. It's crazy how hard it is for them. They just don't think voting is that effective.
Mm-hmm.
They're not very engaged around democracy. They want voting to include other action like boycotts and protests and petitions that they feel are more effective than voting. And then they want new leadership. And ironically, people don't associate it with us, but we work for a whole host of the youngest candidates in Congress. Maxwell Frost, AOC, Yasmin Asani, Greg Kassar. And people need to move over and allow them to show their leadership. We need to use our young, vibrant leaders a lot more. They are incredible. And older voters and younger voters are very won over by them.
Is there a sleeper issue that whoever kind of grabs hold of that may actually have another step up as we move into and beyond the midterms?
So it's not particularly sleeper, but the candidates and the parties are not talking about it enough.
Mm-hmm.
And that is healthcare.
Yeah.
And healthcare costs. It is the issue that actually Democrats and progressives has the most credibility on in terms of affordability. 64% of Americans think that in a year, they will have a healthcare incident that will put them into medical debt. It is astounding. They're taking off the prescription drugs. They're terminating Medicaid for a number of people. They're terminating the subsidies. So healthcare costs and healthcare affordability is a huge issue. We ought to be talking about it, and not just in the negative, but what we're going to do about it.
What is the positive remedy for that? I mean, 64%, that stuns me that
Isn't it stunning?
Yeah, 2 out of 3 Americans say, oh my God, we're going to be behind the financial 8 ball from something that's coming at us we can't control.
There are a lot of things we could do. The VA negotiates 399 drug prices.
Mm-hmm.
Medicare negotiates 10, and they're talking about taking that away. Why in the world don't we just march over with the VA price list and say, apply it to Medicare? I haven't heard of VA going under, and I haven't heard of Pfizer going under because of the VA. So obviously, people are able to make it. And we're talking to a lot of governors and a lot of AGs and mayors about what can they do on prescription drug prices. We can ensure that there is an affordability option under ACA. We can fight to restore Medicaid. And you have Republican governors, like the governor of Ohio, saying, if you do this to Medicaid, you are taking away my fentanyl and opioid program, which was ravaging communities, including J.D. Vance's family.
Mm-hmm.
So there are a lot of things we can do. We can Medicare for all. Nobody wants to talk about it. Wildly popular with the voters. There is a lot on the affordability agenda we can do. If Mark Cuban can figure out how to get discounted drugs to people, why in the world can't governors figure out how to get discounted drugs to people? So I think the healthcare issue is the issue we should be taking on. We should make it clear to voters what we will do if you give us power. And we will do this day one.
Doesn't that fit under the affordability umbrella?
Totally. And it's the number one issue under the affordability umbrella that people think progressives and Democrats will be better at than Republicans.
Okay, so over the years, you coined some very, very catchy ways of describing voter groups, like NASCAR dads and waitress moms, I think, and others, right? You have a new group that may be influential in the affairs of politics.
Well, I haven't got a new group because honestly, so many people are upset. But what you are is the struggling majority is what we should be looking at. Mm-hmm. You know, people in 2024 did a Hail Mary because they said enough is enough. And if you're not going to offer change, I'm going to do the Hail Mary. And as Democrats, we should be ashamed if we're not winning them. We should be ashamed if we're not speaking to their needs. If people don't have an economic reason to vote for Democrats, they have no reason to vote for Democrats.
So there was the recent announcement out of the administration of a $50 billion rural health care fund. And it's pointed out to me that's like 60% of the ball game in America, right? What can Democrats do to message into rural constituencies, maybe that they're not yet doing, which tend to be more conservative and more Republican?
One of the things we don't understand is we are completely out of touch with rural life today. First of all, rural people really want good schools for their kids. We beat vouchers in 3 states last year. Everybody starts the voucher conversation in the urban areas. We started the voucher campaigns in the rural areas because I remembered when my parents were sending us to school and they drove us 25 miles to school. Vouchers are meaningless. Like, what alternative school? And in rural America, you have to have good public schools. And in my neighborhood, like, what are you talking about? The Seventh-day Adventist Academy? There's no alternative schools in rural America. My entire childhood, we had no health insurance. And we finally got an emergency policy for my mom when she got really sick so we wouldn't lose the ranch. I remember sitting at kitchen tables and people saying, well, at least Joe is going to be on Medicare now. Healthcare is a huge issue. These rural hospitals are already going under in anticipation of the Medicaid cuts. We should be fighting on that. We have written off rural America. We have assumed because they are more conservative in their values that we have nothing to say to them. We have so much to say, and we have no one saying it because no one is in touch with rural America in our party.
You obviously represent all sorts of groups, all sorts of candidates, et cetera. Who's on your radar right now that maybe is not on America's radar yet that you really have your eye on?
Well, a bunch of the new members, like Greg Casar, ironically, the Republicans recognize him as a threat more than the Democrats do because that's one of the districts where they put 2 Democrats against each other.
Oh, right.
Maxwell Frost, eloquent out there. Obviously, the Jasmine Crockett's, AOCs, et cetera, are on the notice. Abdul Al-Sayed, who is our client in Michigan, who said we should not be sending military offensive weapons to Israel. We should be using that money to build schools for our children in Detroit. Really, really eloquent. All of the Hellcats. I love these veterans are running in record numbers. People who are in touch with real lived experience, like Peggy Flanagan in Minnesota, Native American women. So there is so much going on that what's exciting is honestly to get out of Washington and really be in the countryside where a lot of really great candidates are running, a lot of great things are being said. And these colonels, I want to start the colonels pack. There are all kinds of man and female colonels running as Democrats in North Carolina and Ohio. And these people are so clear and stand up to power. So watch Adam Miller in Ohio, for example, and Mo Davies and Pam Stevenson. There are just a lot of these colonels. These are not privates. These are colonels.
Right.
So there's a ton of stuff going on outside the country. And I think get out of Washington and look at what's really happening in the country.
Made me want to stand up and salute as you're starting to go through the Hellcats, the colonels, everything else. Of all the things you've ever been involved in, all the campaigns, it's a tough question. What was your favorite moment? The one time where you said, God, that was really cool.
Working for AOC. I loved so much when we went into the district and just saw the grassroots support for her. And everybody was saying this, how she can't win, blah, blah, blah. You shouldn't take her. You shouldn't challenge an incumbent. And they were accusing her of being a bartender. And she was a bartender, but she was many other things. And of course, little old me, I'm like outraged for the woman. And I said to her, we got to get your fuller profile out there. And she said, I am a bartender and I want to fight for the bartenders. I'm perfectly fine with this. We're not taking it on. And it's like, yeah, you're right. Okay. We're not taking it on. We're going to be for the bartenders and the wait staff.
Well, I think you just came up with the new voter group, Bartender Democrats. So I just want you to know, together we just found a new pocket for us to talk about.
And we should all work it aggressively.
Well, Celinda, I really appreciate your time. Your reputation speaks for itself. Maybe what's not understood about you is you as a person. I mean, I've always admired you, the way you basically said what other people would not be willing to say in a beautiful, classy, very smart way. I want you to know that you've been one of those people that's helped all of
Oh,
America
thank you.
kind of get there. We could disagree on politics, but not on the central mission, which is
Totally.
a stronger union.
I completely agree. Thank you for your voice. Look forward to working with you, and thank you for all your listeners. It's amazing.
Take care, Celinda.